Oh, okay. The microphone sounds quieter on stage than it did last. Oh, no, it doesn't.
There we go.
Hello. Welcome back. And are there some new people? Because I feel like I made friends with you all personally before. No? Oh, it's the same people. Okay, maybe I didn't. So we're now going to have a discussion, a Q&A, and we've got, as you can probably tell, we've multiplied. So I'm going to introduce, first of all, Kat Wetherill, who's one of Europe's leading performance storytellers for adults. She studied drama at Hull University and worked professionally as an actor and a singer before discovering storytelling in '97. Championed by the Hay Festival, her career has since taken her around the world. Her current adult work is fiercely female and rooted in the turbulence of midlife. She's also a best-selling children's author and writes for adults, including The Times and Primetime Radio 4. Kat. Laura Jane Williams is a writer with a history, from writing for the Huffington Post to community development work in Sri Lanka, running her notorious blog Superlatively Rude since 2008, backpacking through Asia, teaching English in Italy, publishing her successful ebook, She's Run the Gauntlet of Experience. Lynn Denman is a performer whose repertoire includes songs deeply rooted in the traditions, rhythms and languages and landscapes of the Celtic countries. She runs workshops and has sung traditional and new Welsh, English and French songs for audiences in 5 countries. Continents. She works... That's the world, isn't it? That's everywhere. She works regularly with, with the storyteller Michael Harvey and musician Stacey Blythe, interpreting through songs tales from the Mabinogion and other stories. Lynn is half of the well-known British folk band Ffôn. And lastly, Gwenno Saunders, but not least, is a music producer, DJ and radio presenter, musician and singer from Cardiff. She's a native Welsh and Cornish speaker, and it's this, along with co-producing and co-hosting the Welsh language show Cam o Tywyllwch.
Ooh, Diane.
With Pesky for Radio Cardiff, and more recently Resonance FM, that has led her to create music that translates her internationalist influences into layered home-fi keyboard sounds, wrapped in echoed vocals and music concrete-inspired beats. I don't know what that means. Yeah, I'm really excited to find out. And Gwenno's doing a gig later on.
After, so please don't go.
Yeah. So that's 9:30?
Yeah.
Yeah, down in the bar. So we'll see you all for a drink afterwards. So I hope you've been thinking, if you came along to the talks before, you might have been inspired to think of some questions that you might have for the panel. And while you're thinking, I'll kick off. Anyone and everyone might want to answer this. I was thinking of that Simone de Beauvoir quote about one is not born a woman, becomes one. Yeah, roughly, is that the quote? And I wondered, what advice would you give to your 12-year-old self?
I would give myself that advice that I was just reminding Aurora about, and God, what was it? Don't let negative people live in your brain rent-free.
Yeah.
I wish I'd known that.
Anyone else? There's not a right answer.
I think, well, for me, I think I would tell my 12-year-old self to ease up a bit and enjoy things, and everything doesn't have to be perfect. You can actually just get by sometimes.
I think maybe as well, you have a gut instinct, and I know this is quite a basic thing, but you have a gut instinct, and I think most of your life is spent that's questioned quite often and makes you less confident in your own voice, your own inner voice that tells you actually you are right about something if you feel that it's true to you, and I think especially perhaps as young girls, I don't think your voice being valued perhaps within society as a whole, it's something that starts at quite a young age, that you become unsure of what you think is right because everything around you suggests that maybe you can't be right. So I think maybe it would be something like that.
I think to that end, I would say be obsessed. We kind of put quite a heavy weight on, pardon my French, not giving a shit. And actually, the most interesting and engaged people with life are those who have the fortune of figuring out what they're obsessed with, but then just enjoying it as well. And so often we don't allow ourselves to do that. No, you know, if I run every day, people will think I'm insane. Oh, you know, if I hide away and make music every evening, you know, just do it. Find what you love and do it. And it doesn't matter if you're uncool, just get on with it. Engage yourself before you try and impress others.
I would say do what you love. I think that's what I would say most to my 12-year-old self. That actually was what I ended up doing what I loved, but I think that was the best thing. Even ignoring what the teachers wanted me to do. I remember I wanted to be a singer, and I had to have a career interview, and the teacher sat there and said to me, "Who do you think you are, Barbara Streisand?" I thought, well, maybe. You know, and I went on and I had a career as a singer, and I found the teachers at school, especially if you were clever, and I was academically clever, they really wanted to kind of shoehorn you into the places where they should go. They really wanted me to go to Cambridge, but they didn't do drama at Cambridge. So I knew that if I was forced into studying English as they wanted me to study, I would actually run off and join the footlights and get thrown out after a year because I wouldn't do any of the work. So I actually ignored them and went and did a drama degree, and that seemed to make a lot more sense to me. You know, I thoroughly enjoyed my drama degree and have been a performer ever since. So yes, it's your instinct as well. If you feel that that's what you want to do it.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's,
Is that to do with this?
it's to do with that on the back of that. I don't want to derail the conversation, but I just wondered if by doing that, I'm quite interested in the concept of, this is going to sound ridiculous, but warrior loneliness, when you are a strong person who knows what they want, and actually that can be quite an isolating thing, because a lot of people ain't going to be on board with that. It makes them afraid. Did you find that being so sort of strong-minded about what your destiny was and what you were supposed to do, that have you ever suffered from warrior loneliness? I'm sorry I'm calling it warrior loneliness.
I don't know. I've always been happy in my own company as well, because I tend to get bored with people quite quickly if I'm not sparking. So I don't mind being on my own, really. I was very struck with what Joy was saying about ignorance. Sometimes ignorance takes you a long way. And my mother always said to me, "You're strong." She said it over and over to me all the time. "You're the strong one, you're the strong one, you're the strong one." So I never questioned that I was strong, really. And it's very interesting when I was listening to some of the panelists and some of the things that come up in women's conferences about women questioning themselves and seeking permission to do things. To me is a strange kind of bewildering concept, because I've just never felt that. Probably because my mother said to me all the time, "You're strong and clever." So I just kind of accepted that and got on with it. Never really questioned or thought that would I need permission to do that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's in the makeup of who you are in the first place, but some of us have to work on that.
Absolutely.
I think what your mother tells you is hugely important, really. And now it's the thing that I talk about, most with my mother. My mother has dementia, but, she, there were certain things that she said to me as a child that I absolutely believed. And I think one of the things that I would take on board now and say to my 12-year-old self is that you don't always have to believe your mother. No, you don't. I mean, this was really, really interesting, because I was working with therapists the other day, and we were talking about fear. What did you fear when you first started dating? And I said I was terrified of getting pregnant because my mother had told me that if I dared to get pregnant, she would throw me out on the street. And I really believed her. And this is like, you know, the 1980s. I really believed her. And one of the therapists said to me she had exactly the same fear. And I know now that I would never have been thrown out onto the street. You know, it's just my mother saying that because she didn't want her clever daughter, who was about to go to university, to throw it all away by getting pregnant to some boy. So she was saying it out of the right reason. But I really, really believed her, you know, at 17, that if I dared to get pregnant, I would be out on the street. And it was a terrifying thought. And I've said these things to my mother. I said, oh, you know, you told me not to have children, which she did. So I didn't have children. She said, surely you didn't believe me when I said that. I said, well, actually, yes, I did. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Any other advice? Bits of advice for the 12-year-old you?
Yeah, I think it resonates with what you're saying. I think I would say to my 12-year-old self, it's okay to be different. Because growing up, I was so extrovert, it was beyond belief. And all my family were very quiet, very, you know, calm, collected, quite academic. And later on, I've always had distinctions now, but when I was young, I was totally chaotic. And my parents said a lot to me that were not right. And they said, you would not amount to anything because you're just so loud and you're so frank. Don't say what you want all the time. Be careful. You need to be a bit more subdued because you can't fit in this country if you're not careful. And when they met Andrew, the best human being, my father proceeded to tell him just how frank I could get and encouraged him to be very careful and be sure that he wanted me. And Andrew was absolutely determined he had the right person. So as a 12-year-old, I would say to myself, it's okay to be different. It's okay to be bubbly. It's okay to be extrovert. And the way that I'm relating with my children who were both born here, I just leave them to be who they are. I think they've thrived better than I did because I had all those hang-ups from growing up to facing challenges in this country that could have broken me, but, you know, it didn't, thank God, you know. So definitely it's okay to be you.
Well, no, I think what was going through my mind was about not just your mother, but sort of, you know, adults talk rubbish sometimes, and they just, you know, they're just filling time, they're just saying stuff. And I think you just, you know, and I think you take it really seriously. So I can remember at my dad's funeral, one of my somebody said to me, well, you've got to be the grown-up now, you've got to look after your mother. And that was just like a throwaway comment. So that was just something that was said to feel, like I say, just something to say. But you know, when you're that age, you just kind of take it as gospel. And that's, you know, like now looking back, you sort of think, oh, you know. So I think I would sort of say, yeah, you know, grown-ups just talk rubbish sometimes. You don't need to listen to it, to everything they say. Yeah, you know.
They do.
Any more? Should we? No. Anyone want to ask us a question? Anything at all? Yeah.
So I went to WOW in London yesterday, and during one of the panels, somebody in the audience said that women should stop whinging and just start acting like men, and get on with it, basically. So if you think that all the business is done on the golf course, go and learn and play golf, and then you'll be there with them. And I have a particular opinion about that as a statement, but I just wanted to get your opinion. And then maybe I'll share mine. But I think it's clear what I think about that as a statement. It's not great.
So you don't need me to repeat the question. You have a mic. Yeah? Okay. Anyone got any responses to that bombshell?
Well, I think that what these sort of events create, and I went to the Sound Women event, which was a networking event for broadcasting and women in radio and broadcasting. And I think there's maybe room for, I think these events are the golf course, for me anyway. What I found was that, I don't know, you always feel, you do in your own industry feel a lot of the time on the outside, and you very rarely meet other women. You know, for me in music and in radio, I very rarely meet other female musicians and broadcasters on the side of things. And I find that these sort of events are sort of building this idea that you have an event to network in, and because I think that they are cliques, really. I think the golf course things, and I remember there was a woman, I can't remember her name now, but she's a journalist, Daily Mail. She's a columnist, and she was actually quite brilliant, even though I completely disagreed with her politics. But yeah, and she was like, oh, you know, I'd go to a pub and I'd go and have the rounds with everyone else, and then I'd just go to the toilet and chuck it down the bin, and I'd sort of get involved in that sort of way. But I think we can create our own network. That's what I think. I think that for the time being, until women are equal to men in society, I think we do need these kind of events that will sort of create that network of women. And I found them incredibly useful. So I think we can reflect that.
I think for me it's a really dangerous thing to attribute kind of masculine traits and feminine traits to a human experience. It's not gender specific, and you know, I'm actually surrounded by a lot of gay men. My housemate is gay, my brother is gay, my best friend is gay, and I think this has coloured my view that, you know, they don't want to go to the golf course, they don't want to be tied to their desk, they don't want these traditional values that a lot of them were brought up with, and I think in order for their playing field to alter, more women need to speak up about their values, so that it's not a case of women having to play to male values in order to get accepted. It's about contributing a voice that means everybody's experience gets altered. Does that make sense? I feel like I didn't explain that very well.
What have you found, you know, in your experience, because obviously you're at the top of your fields, have you had to play that game, or is that something which you've managed to avoid completely?
I think in the job I'm in now, there's much more contact with the private sector, and maybe it's something that's more prevalent in the private sector, that kind of golf course kind of, you know, deals done in, you know, most of the men I know don't, you know, go to that, don't want to do that either. And I agree with you about this kind of like, you know, this, I'm wary of this kind of, oh, women are like this and men are like that. And, you know, I think the thing for women is that because while we still don't have enough women in top positions in whatever walk of life, you don't have the vertical networks that men have. So you don't have, so we need to get those women into those positions. And that's something that Quariteg is really pushing forward on, to help pull other women up, and to show women that it's possible, and to show young girls that there's a whole range of other options out there, as well as hairdressing and nursery nursing. You know, and not that that's, if that's what you love doing, do it, but broaden out those horizons. But personally, I mean, I can think of, I can't imagine playing golf. I just can't see it. And actually, the sort of, I might be being really unfair now to people who do enjoy playing golf, but I can't imagine getting on with people who are sort of, you know, the whole concept of it to me just seems really alien, and just something I wouldn't put any energy or effort into doing. I do know some. I remember talking to somebody, a woman, a chief exec, who said that she listened on, she kind of purposely listened to like sports programs and things like that, so that when she arrived at a meeting, because I think men do have. My husband does this all the time. Like, they walk into a meeting and there's sort of people they don't know, and they can always talk about football or rugby or, you know, it's a good icebreaker. So she would, like, learn that stuff so that when she turned up and she was out, you know, making tea or, you know, getting your cup of coffee and stuff, that she would be able to take part in those conversations. I can't really be bothered with that either, to be honest. Like, you know, but I don't know what ours are for that, because I don't know what I don't think we've got like football or rugby to talk about in the same way, that sort of icebreaker
What I
stuff.
will
don't know.
say is, it is a bit of a bugbear when we communicate on that superficial fashion style level, especially when you are in a mixed gender meeting or circumstance or event, and then right off somebody compliments your shoes, you're talking about what a bargain they were, the man's gone off because he didn't know how much his shoes cost, his wife bought them for him, and then you've split. It is, I don't know what the answer is, but I certainly know it's an issue that how do you do it? The question is totally there.
And does it really matter that much? Do you know what I mean? Because I think there's the quote that you put up there about it's people remember how you made them feel. And actually, that sort of stuff it breaks the ice, or the stuff on the golf course. It kind of, yeah, it does fashion some relationships, but I think you can do it in your own way. You know, and I think Emma Watkins from the CBI was sort of saying, when she sort of realised that she was the only woman on this board, you know, it's like 19 men and her, she says, I actually use it to my advantage because I'm remembered.
Yeah.
You know, you can, and I do think the point about stop whinging, I do think whinging, whoever we are, doesn't actually get us anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, so I think turning, the skill of turning a negative into a positive is a really, really good one to have. And I think that attitude of sort of saying, actually, I'm going to use the fact that I stand out to my advantage is let's turn a negative into a positive. That's a better way to be.
I think I'd like to say that's one of the things I've enjoyed about today, that there's been such a lot of positivity and people haven't focused on the negatives. They've actually looked at positive ways of dealing with situations. And I think if we can turn that around, then so much for better. And I think also that the interesting thing now is that the polarised positions between male and female do seem to be changing, and there are lots of realities and there are lots of ways of being. And I think if we can build on that's good for the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Can we have, yeah. We've got a question up here. Thank you.
Mine is rather, sorry. You talked about positive. Well, there's a negative thing I wanted to ask you about and a positive. So perhaps I should start with a negative and end with a positive. In view of the continued disparity in the workplace regarding pay and the treatment that women find with regard to the judicial system in terms of domestic violence, should we really be moving towards dismantling the Equality Commission that many felt should never have been used as a means of putting together all the race relations, disability, equality, which was basically some people thought was a means to save money, and has to a certain extent diluted the very strengths in the individual, be it women's realm, disability realm, race realm. Do you think that we should move back to having the individual bodies, or do you think it's very unlikely and that the most we could do is try to move back to that situation when, for instance, there was a race relations commission and a race relations board? One was the prosecuting body that people would take their concerns to and would prosecute those instances of bad practice, and the other was trying to create racial harmony. So you'd have it with women, those prosecution board, and those who tried to ensure that women had a far better status in society. How do you think we should proceed with that? The other question I'll leave till maybe...
No, that's good. I think you've made your point. Brilliant. Do you want to deal with that one?
Yeah. Essentially, I think the points that you raised are absolutely valid. Within the Commission for Racial Equality at the time, and I know other commissioners within the Equal Opportunities Commission and the Disability Rights Commission argued to remain separate. It was a cost-saving exercise, to be honest, and a lot of strands, as they were called then, felt that their particular emphasis would be forgotten and swallowed up. And that's exactly what's happened. If you look at the Equality and Human Rights Commission, they've been literally stripped bare. And for example, race feel that we're not the important points that are being highlighted by the Commission, which was why the former commissioners from the Commission for Racial Equality who live in Wales, we got together and set up the Race Council Cymru. So I know that many organizations are beginning to look at alternative ways of providing the same service. It's unfortunate because the Equality Act of 2010 was introduced to simplify discrimination legislation, because you had 115 different separate pieces of legislation, and it was a nightmare. I don't know any lawyer who's read them all, but we collect money and tell you what we can't tell you. But it was meant to simplify matters, but what it has done is made a mishmash of everything. And I think at the moment, we cannot work effectively and impactively with the Commission the way it is, because there are too few people doing a huge amount of work across Wales, and it's even a bigger ratio when you go to England. So yeah, absolutely support the work of groups like Age Cymru for older people, Transgender Wales for transgender, women's equality work with Chwaraetig and the Women's Equality Network in Wales, Race Council Cymru, and the regional equality councils, groups like Disability Wales, groups like the Stonewall Cymru. So all these groups are beginning to try and ensure that their particular protected characteristic is not swamped. So it's a very tough one, because the great thing about the commissions were that they had a regulatory aspect, so that they could actually take legal action against you. They were instituted by legislation, and now we're all scratching at the doors, and we're all charities and trying to scramble for money. And it's unfortunate, but that's where we are. And a lot of grassroots people, ordinary people, their lives are constantly compromised by these inequalities and this injustice, really.
So you're saying step one, perhaps get back to one commission which is conducts prosecutions, the other which tries to improve the status of disabled people, race, etc., but at the same time working towards re-establishing the individual bodies which pre-existed.
Yeah, personally, and I don't have any rights at all, but my thoughts are the whole system currently is a disaster, and it is not working. I would say, if you asked me to say what would work, is to empower the lead organizations like we've seen here, who know the grassroots communities and the women in the villages that many top organizations who work strategically don't know. Engage them, empower them, fund them to do that grassroots level work, then empower the EHRC with regulatory authority across the board, so that you know that there is a bit of teeth behind the legislation, because right now they're trying to look at strategic equality plans across Wales and across all the strands of protected characteristics now. So gender, race, ethnicity, all those things, religion and belief. And I think it's too much for a tiny little team of people. It's not working. You know.
Okay, for the...
You have your positive question as
yes.
well.
We're celebrating today International Women's Day. Note, it's International Women's Day, but it's Black History Month, Roma History Month. Do you think it's not time for it to become at the international... excuse me. Don't you think it should become International Women's Month, or at the very least, if you think it should be step by step, in International Women's Week, 1 year, and then work towards International Women's Month the next? Don't you think it's time for a whole month?
Kat, Laura, anyone?
I don't know
Oh,
about
I would
anybody
love
else.
that. I would love that, because not only is it International Women's Day, it's also World Book Day, which becomes World Book Week, and it's also St. David's Day. And purely from a kind of financial point of view, the work I am turning down, I could be doing 3 things on any one day. This is, I mean, I you know, as a storyteller, I have incredible stories for women, and this is the first time I've been able to do anything on International Women's Day because it's fallen on a Saturday. And I've just done Monday to Friday of World Book Week. Like I said, St. David's Day is on the same week as World Book Week. I have a book about St. David's Day. I can't work in Wales. I'm busy with books. And I know there's a lot of things happening, but it would be great if International Women's Day was stretched into a week. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yes. Yeah. Will it be a weekend next year? Presumably next year it'll fall on a Sunday. So it'll be another...
It won't take long for this to become at least a week or a month.
It'll be another weekend.
I think maybe for next year, all depending on what we
Yeah.
I don't think the 8th of March limits us to when we host it, as long as we celebrate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a shame actually that a number of things have been happening this weekend. You know, it's like today. There's been another brilliant sort of parade and an
Yes.
event at Chapter in Riverside, and you know, it's all squashed in.
It's all just
So,
the one
social
day.
media-wise, it was nice though, because we did, three of us, Gwenno and Laura, we did a Q&A with Twitter, and so lots of conversations were happening that were, you know, joining lots of different things nationally together, which was nice.
I mean, you may think I'm raising this in jest, but don't you think women deserve a month?
Of course we do.
Yeah.
I'm having an International Women's Life. So, and I think everybody here is, and we're all on the same page, whether they call it a day on Wikipedia or they call it a month. I think between us, any movement forward is good. So.
Great. Any more questions? Put your hand up and give me a wave. Don't be backward in coming forward. Yeah.
This is working.
Yeah.
Earlier, I can't remember who said it, but you were talking about the internal conversation that you have about how you can't do stuff and about how other people say that you can't do stuff either. How do you actually ignore that? Because somebody said that you have to ignore it. That's a really good trick.
I think just read the book Clarity. Read the book. There's a book called Clarity, and it will absolutely stop it overnight.
It was me that said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't ignore it. It won't go away, and it's not coming from you necessarily. It's coming from the whole world, which is why, you know, let's go easy on ourselves, as somebody else said. I think you said that. Was it you? Anyway. Yeah. It takes. You just need to pay attention to it, I think, and notice when you're doing it. But I don't have the answer to it, and I'm definitely my whole year of change thing. That's not over. That's my whole life's work, is to try and get rid of that. Anyone else got anything else on that?
I think, because of the sort of circles that I've been involved in a lot, women's business networks and so on, where people find themselves often quite isolated when they first start off. You know, they don't have the support of an organisation anymore. They're working on their own. If they're working from home, they're on their own. And some of the things that people have said to me are surround yourself with positive people, so that, you know, you're all reinforcing positivity for each other, so that every time you have that little nagging doubt in your own head, you've got other people to counteract that with their positive views and positive images about you. And I think that's really important.
I think that's something I would tell my 12-year-old self. You become like the people you're around. So surround yourself with the people that make you the best version of yourself.
My daughter's 17, and some of she and her colleague, her sort of peers, have found this sort of problem already now, and they've just started something new where they're saying to each other, "Don't pee in my bucket." I quite like that.
That's a good one.
And aren't Brits awful for saying sorry all the time? Apologising for themselves all the time.
Yeah.
I got on a plane in America to come back to Heathrow, and I knew I was on a plane full of Brits because everyone's saying, sorry, sorry, sorry. It's hard. It's bad.
I think I agree with you. It was me that was saying about the external and the internal, and I absolutely agree about sort of surrounding yourself with positive people. And I'm a bit kind of, I think I'm a bit harsh on this, but because I've got friends who are still friends with people who, and all they do is moan about them. So I've got to see something, and I just don't get it. I just, yeah, so I just kind of don't continue friendships or relationships where it's negative.
Absolutely.
Quite cold on that one.
But
Yeah.
that can be, I think, the hardest thing in the world, to walk away from a relationship that's not serving you, because we're taught to be polite and shut up and put up a bit. That's something that I struggle with a lot. I know this isn't serving me, but how do I move away from this?
I think I don't know, I kind of find that I'm quite good at that.
But see ya.
But and then the internal voice, I think you just you know, it does, you know, come up, but I do just choose, I think it's just, I choose to ignore it. I kind of recognise now that it's not based on anything.
Yeah.
Where is it coming from? It's not based on anything, so I just ignore it. I don't know how, but maybe it's an age thing.
I think that's a brilliant question.
Interesting.
Gwenno, your gig is quite soon, so do feel whenever you want. It's 1:15, that's all, and I'm not saying go yet. Just... Does anyone have any more?
I have a question.
Question from Laura.
And I hope you won't judge me for this, but it kind of starts with Andrew. This might reflect my age. Sheryl Sandberg, the CAO, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Lean In movement, the CAO of Facebook, she said the most feminist thing that you can do is pick a good husband.
Yes.
And she meant that in terms of marry somebody who is going to raise the kids by 50%, who is going to do 50% of the housework, who is going to enable you to be your best. And as a 27-year-old woman, I'm not finding an awful lot of those guys out there. I am single, if there's anyone, no, okay. And I just wondered if, between you all, but this particularly came from, you know, Andrew being so great, how do you deal with that? How, you know, not how do you find the right man, but in terms of having an equal relationship and just, you know, just because feminism isn't synonymous with I can do this alone and I don't need nobody.
Yes, exactly.
You know, you can assert your femininity at the same time as being a feminist. And I think often the conversation is had in two isolated instances. And I want to bring that together. I want to be a woman. I want to be loved. I want to be in a relationship. But I want it to be a brilliant one. Discuss.
Do you know, it's interesting because I did the opposite of what my parents advised me to do, which is try and mellow down and try and be demure and try and be quiet. And it's just like asking a hurricane not to take things with it when it's moving. It can happen. You know, I tried being quiet and everybody was like, what's the matter? That's not me. And when I met Andrew, he was my law lecturer, and I walked into class and I saw him delivering this. I was late with my best friend. And I said on to my best friend, I said, that is my husband. He said, Dr. Iwobi is your husband? You're joking. Are you insane? How? You're reaching too high for yourself, because Andrew had his PhD in law when he was 24. All the girls in class of 200 wanted Andrew. And I said to her, I sense his spirit. You know, he just comes across so genuinely kind. And I knew, because I'd gone through a lot in growing up and not being understood, that I needed somebody who would cherish me, in a sense. And when you meet somebody, who, you know, sometimes they speak to you without even speaking. And how was he going to notice me? Well, I'll share my wiles later. How do you stand out in a class of 200? It's a massive issue. Well, it was interesting. He liked my food, and I cooked for the Lord dinner. And he came, and myself and my younger sister, who was a medical student, fed about 1,000 people. We made all the food ourselves, 3-course dinner for lawyers, and a judge came to speak. And he said, "Who made that food?" I said, "I did." "Wow, did you? You sure?" I said, "Yeah, I did." And he asked me to come, and he'd pay me to do some food for this gathering he was doing. In the end, I got Andrew. So he always tells people, she found her way through the food. It was interesting. But seriously, to answer your question, I just think you have to be yourself. You cannot be anything but transparently honest about who you are, because you can only keep up a pretense so long. You will crack under the burden of being somebody you think you ought to be, because you're always living 2 lives, and you don't want to show your strength or your passion or your, frank speaking or using your hands and moving it like this. If you are like that, you will literally need to sit on your hands and chain yourself down. So I thought from the very beginning, no, my parents can talk about girls who fit the Nigerian culture, who fit into the framework, and being very gentle and being subservient, not subservient, but being submissive to your husband and whatever. I knew that was not me. And so who had to be next to me, or who I would love to be a part of, would be somebody that broad-minded. And it was interesting because in my family today, I would say that Andrew leads in the house. People don't believe it because I'm quite a strong personality. But he leads by love. He leads because he empowers me to be who I can be. And because I know he's invested in my future. He celebrates me more than any human being that I know. And when that is happening, he's not threatened by my success. He's not threatened by my pizzazz, because he knows who I am. I'm grounded because of him. So when I think of Andrew, I just think, oh my days. I said to him yesterday, we've been married 23 years. I said, if there is a reincarnation, I'll be looking for you with all my heart. He said, oh. So the truth is, over the years, when I went to the Home Office to do this police thing, I worked for ACPA and 43 Forces. I had to live in London. He was so gracious because he said, the kids were a bit little. They were still going to classes, saxophone, violin, piano, football, all the stuff. So he said, Uzo, you go there because you're there for us. When you're doing well, we are doing well. So you go there. And he's still a lecturer, so he did all the homework. But what I did then, I'd come home weekends on a Friday and cook all the meals, freeze them so he has an easy time of just warming food. And I'd do all the ironing for them to help out, because he did all the homework, he did the running around, he did all the fetching and carrying. And when they called from school, somebody's ill, he had to leave lectures and go and get them. So it was a shared partnership. And you know the interesting thing, when I finished my service in the Home Office then, I was offered a £68,000 job to stay in London. It was much more than I was earning. And I looked at that job and I thought, do you know what? Andrew pulls me more. And we're not rich. We're not half as rich as I could have been had I taken that position. But do you know what? I think I'm so rich in other things, because I was saying to Joy that many times we don't have 2 pences to rub together, because even though I have a job that I do and I really earn a good salary, it's not much. If you'll be shocked how little it is actually. But we're investing in training people in Nigeria. So we're always without money. But it is the richness of the power that he gives to me to believe nothing is too limited for you. Like any opportunities with the Red Cross, he'd say, go for it. Why not? You're that good. Go on. I'll support. And that's the way it is. I think you have to look for your other half in somebody, because you know your strengths more than anyone else. And you know your weaknesses. If you get to duplicate you, it'd be a disaster. 2 Uzos in one house. No. So he's the rational, calm, chilled, planner, calculator, and I'm like a spokesperson, So that's how the partnership works.
Great. We had a... can I try and bring it to a close? But I so want to hear more, and we'll do that in the bar in a bit, I hope. Yeah. Especially I want to know about the wilds, although I am happy. A thing came up on Twitter earlier, how do we bring boys and men into the conversation? And I think that what you just said really made me think, when you're doing well, we're doing well, you just said. So let's get more chaps along next year. I found this absolutely far more inspiring and glorious than I thought it would be. I knew it would be great, but I didn't know that I'd want it to go on all night. And I'm absolutely privileged and delighted to meet these extraordinary women. And thank you for your great questions.
Thank you for your great comparing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Apart from the dreadful timekeeping, because as far as comparing goes, I'm now going to tell you, you've got to get to Gweno's gig, all of you, really fast, because of me. That's my fault. So I owe it to Gweno, and she's great. I heard a clip on the internet. So great, fantastic, lovely to meet you all, and look forward to seeing you and you telling all your friends. Get on the old social media, #WowCardiff, and tell everyone about today, and we'll do a bigger one next time, yeah? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no.